3.
Welcome, everyone. I hope you are all doing well. This is the 7th and last session of the California Zoroastrian Center's seminar, Liberating Zarathushtra's Relevance. And the title of this session is The Celebrated Seven. I have a lot of good stuff to show you, but because of time constraints, I have put some of it in footnotes. So if any of you would like a copy of this talk or any talk, Manaz is going to put my email address in the chat box and just email me and I'll send you a copy. I concluded my last talk with the question, if you had to capture the whole of Zarathustra's spiritual philosophy in one soundbite, what would it be? Obviously, there are many right answers. So let us celebrate our diversity and look at the answers. I'll give them to you in the order in which I received them. There. Darius Captain said, to me, the essence of Zarathustra's teachings in one sentence is use your good mind to determine what is right and wrong and act accordingly. That's a good one. It captures many key ideas, the search for truth, choice, that we do not reject the mind to achieve spirituality. So thank you, Darius. Artemis Javanshir said, my answer would be communal laughter, which would result from communal joy. I love that. Thank you, Artemis. It captures that Zarathustra's teachings are joyful, life-affirming. That we do not withdraw from life to achieve spirituality, we engage it. And Zarathustra's idea of communal is the fellowship of all the living. Esfandiar Bandari said, be happy, make others happy, and leave the world a better place, adding that Zarathustra's 3 commandments, positive thoughts, words, and deeds, are succinct, memorable, and comprehensive. They apply both internally and externally. Very insightful, Esfandiar. I love the emphasis on making others happy and that our good thoughts, words, and deeds are of both internal and external benefit. Dolat Bolandi said, my soundbite would be the doorway to joyful living. That is so beautiful. Thank you, Dolat, and so very true. As you can see, all of these opinions are about how we live our lives. And that indeed is the focus of Zarathustra's teachings. So today I would like to show you a few soundbites from Zarathustra and other ancient teachers of our religion, which provides a framework for living our lives and also for answering the questions that have puzzled the mind of man for millennia. Questions such as, how does God and the rest of us fit into the picture? What is the purpose of life? How is it fulfilled? What is salvation? How are we saved? What is the way to worship? What path should we follow? What is its reward? How are good and evil defined? Well, it is a mark of Zarathustra's genius that with one word, one concept, which he refracts into 7, the way a beam of light is refracted by a prism into the colors of the rainbow, he encapsulates every core element of his spiritual philosophy, giving us a blueprint for living our lives and answering each of these questions. Are you skeptical? One word? Well, let's start with the 7, later called Amesha Spenta, and then see what is the one word, the one concept of which the rest are refractions. Linguists differ about the meanings of these 7 concepts, but the following are linguistically sound, and they also fit all of the ways in which Zarathustra uses these words. They are: the beneficial way of being, spenta manu, which is the true, correct, wholly good order of existence, asha vahishta, truth for short. Its comprehension, good thinking, vahumana, its beneficial embodiment in thought, word, and action, aramaiti, spenta aramaiti, its good rule, vahukshatra, over oneself and social units, its complete attainment, harvata, and the resulting non-deathness, amerita, a state of being not bound by mortality. Now, look at the first 2. How do we know that the first quality, the beneficial way of being, spenta manu, is the true, correct order of existence, asha vahishta? Well, because Zarathustra says so in many, many ways, including some mirrored equations. He says, for example, the way of being, beneficial through truth. Such a person, beneficial through truth. Those who are properly truthful from this beneficial way of being. And the equivalence between spenta and asha is corroborated in later Avestan texts. For example, the Yasna Haptang Haiti says, we celebrate then truth, which is most beautiful, which is beneficial, undying. Now, if we look at these 7 concepts, we can see that all of them are aspects of the true, correct, wholly good order of existence. Here they are again. The first is equated with truth. The other qualities are aspects of truth, its comprehension, its embodiment, its rule, its complete attainment, and the resulting state of being not bound by mortality. And this conclusion, that all these qualities are aspects of truth, asha, is corroborated by later Avestan texts, which more than once describe these 7 qualities as the truthful ones, the 7 who think alike, the 7 who speak alike, the 7 who act alike, who have the same thought, the same word, the same deed. So if all these 7 are truthful, and if they are all alike, they can only be refractions of truth. So if these 7 are all truthful, and if they are all, well, I said that, sorry about that, which makes us appreciate how important it is to understand what Zarathustra has in mind when he uses the word asha. The linguistics of asha, which I have footnoted, show that asha is an order of existence that is inherently true, correct, right. So Insler and other linguists have translated asha as truth. Now in English, truth means factual truth, generally. But the way Zarathustra uses this word, asha, includes both factual truths as well as the truths of mind, heart, spirit. All that is correct, right, good. In the Gathas, this includes such qualities as honesty, generosity, friendship, compassion, justice as in being fair, and other good qualities, one of which today we have forgotten. Love is also included in the meaning of asha. And love pervades every aspect of Zarathustra's teachings. I have footnoted where you can see the evidence. To give you just one example, loving is the word he uses to describe a person who is beneficial through truth. The loving one, beneficial through truth, watching over the heritage for all, is a world healer and thy ally in his way of being, wisdom. In fact, so well known was the central role that love plays in Zarathustra's teachings that it survived even the massive loss of knowledge that followed the Arab invasion of Iran. Although surviving Zoroastrians may not have remembered that love is a part of the meaning of Asha. A Pahlavi text says, the law of Urmast is love of people. Character is love of people, and the fruit of character is love of people. Love of people is freedom from sin, for it is impossible to imagine that the demons could cause harm in the world according to the action of a certain man, and that man should be a lover of people. In the same way, the Ashirwad part of the Pazan Zoroastrian wedding ceremony says, in part, worship God by doing charitable works. The law of the wise Lord is the law of loving mankind. So do not harm people, neither in thought, nor word, nor deed. When a stranger arrives, give him food and shelter. Protect good people from hunger and thirst, from cold and heat. Be kindly to those under you or younger than you. Respect your elders, so that the wise Lord will delight in you. In short, we do not have an English equivalent, not in one word, not even in one phrase, which conveys the full meaning of Asha. So when in a Gatha quotation we see the translation truth, or even the true correct order of existence, we need to remember that it means factual truths as well as abstract truths, all the many qualities that are good, right, generous, loving, etc. Now, how do we know what is truth in a given situation? Well, as Darius Captain so rightly said, we use our good minds to search for truth ongoing. Let us now see how this one concept, Asha, refracted into 7 qualities, encapsulates Zarathustra's entire spiritual philosophy. First, we have already seen in past sessions that in the Gathas, truth and its refractions encapsulates the nature of the divine, who personifies the true, holy, good order of existence, Asha Vahishta, and that mortals have the first 5 of these divine qualities imperfectly and are capable of attaining them all completely. I have footnoted some quotations from the Gathas to refresh your recollection, which brings us to his ideas of the way to worship, the path and its reward. As we discussed in sessions 3 and 4, Zarathustra tells us to worship the divine with its own 7 qualities. And he tells us that the path to the divine and the reward for taking that path are also these 7 divine qualities, which he distills into one concept. Oops, sorry. Eek. Manas, help. How do I get back to my slides?
Okay, just get out of the view option, I guess. I don't know either. Just
Out
get
of the
out.
view
Yeah,
option?
just get out of the share screen. I guess.
Oh,
that's
share screen. Well, my screen's, oh, I can do stop share. Good.
Okay.
3 cheers. Thank you, Manas.
You're welcome.
I am really, really computer challenged.
Oh God, me too.
Okay, let's see.
All right.
Ah, there you go. So Zarathustra distills the path to the divine, the reward for taking that path, into one concept, the paths of truth. which of necessity includes the paths of good thinking. And this is corroborated in a later Avestan text, which is one of my favorite soundbites. There is one path, that of truth. All others are known paths. And this path of truth leads to the reward, the paradise of an enlightened state of being, a state of being that houses the complete personification of truth, which is wisdom. And one of Zarathustra's names for what today we call heaven or paradise is a most good existence, ahuvahishta, which numerous younger Avestan texts describe as truthful. The most good existence of the truthful we celebrate, light, all happiness. Let us next consider the purpose of life and how it is fulfilled. The purpose is for all the living to grow, evolve spiritually from a state of being that is a mix of divine qualities and their opposites to one that is completely good, that personifies Asha completely. And how is this brought about? Through Asha, an order of existence which includes the law of consequences, that we reap what we sow, as well as unearned calamities and mutual loving help to see us through our difficult experiences. We covered this with evidence from the Gathas in session 5, which brings us to salvation. In Zarathustra's thought, salvation is not being saved from damnation and a hell of tortures. Salvation is being saved from what is false, wrong. Salvation is attaining completely truth, its comprehension, its embodiment, its rule, the beneficial way of being, the celebrated 7. Here are a few examples. Let that salvation of yours be granted to us. Truth allied with good thinking, salvation for the truthful. Let salvation be granted to the beneficent man. Beneficence means a bountiful generosity springing from goodness, loving kindness, qualities that are the truths of mind, heart, spirit, Asha. But in Zarathustra's thought, it is not enough for us to save ourselves. We have to help each other make it without interfering with anyone's freedom to choose. He says, yes, those shall be the saviors of the lands, namely those who shall follow their knowledge of thy teaching with actions in harmony with good thinking and truth, wisdom. These indeed have been fated to be the expellers of fury. Fury, anger, rage is the name of one of the high-ranking demons in the later texts, in which all the demons are named for human vices. And a Pahlavi text tells us, confirms the conclusion that these demons are in fact the demons within us, our own vices. I have footnoted the quotation. Which brings us to how good and evil are defined. The only evils in the Gathas are the products of wrongful choices, lies, enmity, harming, injury, hatred, cruelty, predatory violence, bondage, deceit, theft, corruption, murder, tyranny. These are the wrongs expressed in the Gathas. So each time we choose evil in a thought, a word, an action, we bring evil to life. We give it substance. We make it real. And the same is true of goodness. Each time we choose goodness in a thought, a word, an action, we bring goodness to life. We make it real. We give it substance. But more than that, each time we choose goodness, we bring the divine to life in our world and in ourselves. because Zarathustra equates goodness with the true order of existence, Ashavahishta, which the divine personifies. But don't take my word for it. Look at the adjectives he uses to describe these 7 qualities of the divine. Each of these adjectives is some aspect of goodness, which explains why ancient Zoroastrians called the religion Dini Behi, the religion of goodness. And this brings us to a well-known soundbite. How do we personify the comprehension, the embodiment, the rule of truth? We can only do so with thoughts, words, and actions. So if each of these 7 qualities is good, we can see where the maxim, good thoughts, good words, good actions came from. There are those who brush off this maxim as just ethics, not really religious. But in Zarathustra's thought, the personification of truth, which is wholly good, Ashavahishta, encapsulates the divine, the way to worship, salvation, the purpose of life, and its fulfillment, the path and the ultimate good end, paradise, a wholly good existence, a truth-filled state of being. We do not know who invented this little maxim. We do know that it was invented very close to Zarathustra's time period, because it first appears in that form in an early text, the Yasna Haptan Haiti, which is in Gothic Avestan, although not a part of the Gathas. It says, we are praisers in song, not deriders, of good thoughts, of good words, of good actions, here and elsewhere, of those that are being produced and those that have been produced, through effort in taking a stand, we are of the good. Later Avestan texts celebrate this little maxim not only as an affirmation of religious beliefs, as in the Jasamaya Vange Mazda prayer, which I have footnoted, but also as both the path to paradise and the most good existence, Ahuvahishta, which is paradise itself. A later Avestan text says, the first step placed him in the good thought paradise. The second step placed him in the good word paradise. The third step placed him in the good deed paradise. The fourth step placed him in the endless lights. And other Avestan texts describe the endless lights as self-made. I have footnoted examples, and a Pahlavi text calls the divine endless light, an enlightened existence. Indeed, so well known was this idea of paradise being good thoughts, good words, good actions, that it was remembered even after the Arab invasion. A Parsi text says, and heaven is first, Humat, and second, Hukt, and third, Varesht. In short, this little soundbite distills the essence of truth personified, which is the divine, the path to the divine, and the reward for taking that path. As Esfandiar said, succinct, memorable, comprehensive. Right on, Esfandiar. Our dear Shahryar Shahyari once commented in an internet posting that the Amesha Spenta are the operating software for the hardware of existence. A most insightful and accurate comment. I would like to conclude with a soundbite from the Gathas that is one of my favorites. In the last Gatha, Zarathustra gives the following advice to the brides and grooms who were then getting married. But this is good advice for all our relationships. True, sometimes relationships just don't work, despite our best intentions. But this is general advice. He says, let each of you try to win the other with truth, for this shall be of good gain for each. What does this tell us? Well, first, that each one, both the man and the woman, should make the same effort to win the love and respect of the other. So there we have an instance of gender equality. Second, he tells us to win each other with truth, asha. When we are truthful with each other, when we don't tell lies, it builds trust. And if we should also, and we should also try to win each other with the truths of mind, heart, spirit, with all that is good, right, loving kindness, generosity, compassion, friendship, being fair, not injuring, not harming, and all the other qualities included within the meaning of asha. And you may have noticed in your own life experiences that when you are good towards another person, it often, not always, but often generates a corresponding reaction from that person. Third, he says that if we try to win each other with truth, both parties will gain. One of the many good gains of winning each other with truth is happiness. In the very next verse, he says, happiness has been lost to the deceitful who violate truth. As Artemis and Dolat both said, Zarathustra's path of truth is a joyful, life-affirming path. We see this throughout the Gathas. For example, he says, those attainments befitting truth, through which one might set thy supporters in happiness. Do thou grant the most happy alliance of truth to Zoroastrian and to me. Let wisdom come in the company of truth across the earth, with visible help, through which he might set us in happiness. This idea that wisdom's path of truth is a joyful one was well remembered throughout the later Avestan texts. Here are two examples. The very first yasna, which is in Younger Avestan, opens with the statement, Ahura Mazda sends his joy-creating grace afar. And the Younger Avestan Visparad says, with happiness, we celebrate the Lord Wisdom. With happiness, we celebrate what is beneficial, undying. With happiness, we celebrate the truthful man. And with happiness, and with a state of happiness, we celebrate every truthful living being now existing and who will come into being in the future. Of course, does this mean that if we follow Zarathustra's teachings, we will never be unhappy? Of course not. What his teachings do is they provide us with a framework for living that is not fear-based, not control-based, that requires us to be good to each other, watch out for each other, not just Zoroastrians, not even just human beings, but all the living and our earth. In short, it helps us to create an environment that allows happiness to bloom. We are fond of saying happiness to him who brings happiness to others, and that may be true, but Zarathustra takes us a step further. He tells us to be truthful for its own sake. So we should spread the blessings of truth, asha, throughout existence without any thought of return. We should, with our good thoughts, words, and actions, bring whatever happiness we can to the lives we touch, human and other life forms, without thought of any return. And with that, I welcome your questions. Karishma, thank you, Karishma. That is very sweet of you. Thank you. Well, it seems I have put you all to sleep again. There are no questions in the chat box. So if you have any questions, please feel free to answer them, to ask them now. Hilla, do you want to ask something? I think you may have to unmute yourself, Hilla, if you want to. Or Manaz, can you unmute?
I did.
Okay, good.
Okay. I'd like to know how you got so interested and passionate about studying the Gathas. Who influenced you? Who guided you? Did you have a very religious family? Just some thoughts.
Oh, well, Hilla, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but when I was a little girl growing up, I was very turned off on Zoroastrianism because it was just, as I experienced it, it was just a series of do's and don'ts. Many of them didn't mean anything. They didn't have any sense to them. And some of them were very hurtful to my great aunt, who was a widow and whom I loved very dearly. So I thought, this is not for me. And the problem is, sometimes you are done with a thing, but the thing is not done with you. While I was practicing law, a really nice guy called Merwan Irani walked into my law office and said, would I please do the legal work to start the Zoroastrian Association of Pennsylvania? And I said, sure. Well, that started a hunger in me to know my roots. I didn't care if it was good, bad, or indifferent. I just wanted to know the truth. And so I started reading everything I could about Zoroastrianism. And accidentally, really, I came across the Gathas. And at first, I didn't really like them too much. They seemed really hard to read and they didn't do anything for me. But then I thought, Dina, you're missing something. Going back to the ancient Greeks and coming forward to some of our finest university scholars today, the opinion seemed universal that Zarathustra was extremely wise. So obviously, if I did not like the Gathas and couldn't see anything in them, the lack was with me. So then I started studying them in depth. And that's when the light started turning on. And I was totally hooked. I discovered the ideas bit by bit. And they have made a huge, huge difference to my life. So I'm very grateful for whatever guardian angel directed me in this direction. And that's one of the reasons why I would like to share his teachings as widely as possible, because many of the people who write about Zarathustra and translate his words do so with the mindset of other religious paradigms. And I noticed inconsistencies. How could Zarathustra have said this when supposedly he also said that? And the only thing I could do to either Zarathustra was being inconsistent or the translation was at fault. So I decided to teach myself Avestan, which was very, very hard and continues to be hard, but very worthwhile. And I wanted to teach myself cutting edge Avestan from the finest, from the works of the finest linguists. So that's what I did. And it made a huge difference in how I translated and perceived the Gathas. Where I saw the inconsistencies, I recognized that that is not what Zarathustra said. A more literal translation showed me that that is not what Zarathustra said, that the translations that were inconsistent with his other thoughts were in fact influenced by other religious paradigms. So that's what I've been doing ever since, is trying to spread knowledge of his teachings as accurately and as objectively as I possibly can. So Hila, that's the story.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Or
certainly.
would you rather to go to the chat? This is Dolat.
Well, let me see if there are questions. This is from Farshid thanking me. Oh, Farshid, I don't know how you came up with this. So according to Zarathustra's teaching, there is no middle of the road path. You are either with truth or not. You cannot live a passive life and turn a blind eye. That's true for all the evils we see in our lives. Is that true? Yes, Farshid, that's very true. But when you say there is no middle path, although Zarathustra himself does not speak in terms of moderation in the Gathas, many later texts speak of the path of moderation, but I think they mean in our physical lives, you know, like not overeating, not not going to extremes in the physical life. But I think, Farshid, you're 100% right. We cannot live a passive life. We cannot turn a blind eye to evils when we see them. But we have to be careful. We have to try to advance the truth and advance what is good, but not try to control others. So that is a bit of a fine line. This is from Keki Dadachanji. Dolat, I will definitely get to you. So, but since these were ahead of you, I'll take them in turn. Keki says, some readers of the Gathas have interpreted the Amesha Spenta not as the attributes of the divine, but as divine beings themselves. This has resulted in Zoroastrianism being seen as a henotheistic religion. Could you please comment on this interpretation? Yes, I'd be glad to comment. What happened is this. In the Gathas, and I actually researched this, so in the Gathas, if you take each Amesha Spenta and see how Zarathustra uses it, sometimes he uses it as an attribute of the divine. Sometimes he uses it, well, each Amesha Spenta, other than the last two, not Harvatat, not Ameritat, in man. So sometimes he uses the first five as attributes of man. And sometimes he shows a few of them, not all of them, but a few of them as allegories or as entities. Now, logically, if they are attributes of the divine and if they are attributes of man, then when he uses them as entities, they can only be allegories. They cannot be real living entities. For example, I'll give you one of my favorite quotations is Zarathustra says, as long as I shall be able and be strong, so long shall I look in quest of truth. Truth. So now in that verse, which is 28:4, truth is a concept, right? I look in quest of truth. Then in the next verse, he says, truth, shall I see thee as I continue to acquire good thinking? Well, technically, in that verse, truth is an entity. He addresses truth as an entity. But if you look at the meaning of the verse, truth will I see you as I continue to acquire good thinking, which is the comprehension of truth, then you can see that it's an allegory. It's not a real living entity. But with the passage of time and possibly destructive wars, the first being Alexander's, and then even later, the Arab invasion. I think with the passage of time, these allegories came to be seen or thought of as real living entities. But there is a Pahlavi fragment text which shows very clearly that the author of this text understood that these were not actual living entities. I'm trying to think where on my website I explored that text. Keki, I'll make a note and I'll email you so that I'll email you where you can see that Pahlavi text and you can see, that it is, that it lasts, some people, at least in Pahlavi times, understood that they were not entities, but a lot of people did not.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I mean, I'm surprised because some of the very prominent scholars have adopted this position. Surely they will be aware of, these divergences, and they have chosen to stay with that interpretation.
Well, a very prominent Western scholar said, of course they are entities, because in the Gathas, Zarathustra reverences truth. In fact, there are some verses where he mentions the Lord Wisdom, Ahura Mazda, along with truth and good thinking, and offers them reverence and worship and praise. So a very prominent scholar said, of course they are entities. Whoever heard of reverencing or worshiping a concept? Well, that's exactly the point. In Zarathustra's, if you see what Zarathustra did, the deities of his time were mixes of good and evil, and he totally rejected that idea. So to become divine, you had to be wholly good. A being had to have these concepts were what made a being divine. Truth, its comprehension, its embodiment, its rule. That's what makes a being divine. I can only say that, people bring their mindsets, which is understandable. We all have mindsets. People bring their mindsets to an understanding of Zarathustra's thought, and they can't see beyond that. They can't set aside their mindset and try to put themselves in Zarathustra's shoes. And that, I think, is where the problem arises. Also, many scholars, there are many things, take Zarathustra's date. Everyone knows that we do not know his date. There's a huge, ancient historians have a huge range of dates for him. And yet scholars will give their opinions as though they were fact. They'll say, oh, well, Zarathustra lived at this date. That's giving your opinion as a fact. That is not objective. That's not good scholarship. So that's one of my pet peeves. But Keki, if you have any concerns, if you feel that there is any evidence that these are living beings rather than qualities, let me know and I'll see if I can address them.
Thank you.
Dolat, your turn.
Thank you. And I don't want to take more of my time because when you type in, it's more concise, but it's hard for me to put it in a more concise way. So I guess as I was listening to you, first of all, thank you. This is amazing listening to you. But, the idea of darkness, it's as simple as the unknown. It's as simple as, like, I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So it's not so, dark out there, dark stuff, evil stuff. So it can be as simple as just the unknown in life, and encountering Like when something happens in life which is unknown, I don't know what's going to happen.
Mhm.
And I get, and so I have a chance to respond. And from what I'm gathering when you were talking is then I have a choice to go to the fear-based route, which then that's considered the evil, right? So
Well,
then, or
fear is very natural. I wouldn't say fear is evil, but
right.
that's not Zarathustra's way.
So I guess that's what I want to clarify here. So, and I know the word evil is so loaded. I guess what I'm trying to think about in terms of light and dark. So then I have a chance to kind of take the more fear-based path, if you will, or remember the true order, the truth of who I am.
Mhm.
And you know how in the Gathas, he constantly asks Swahumana, he constantly asks serenity, Armaiti, to grant serenity. So then he can choose, and his thinking can be aligned with the true order, with the truth.
Mhm.
And to me, that brings the idea of bringing light in, the divine in, versus the dark in, or
Right.
taking the wrong path, if you will, which can
Right.
be translated to the idea of
But
evil in my
Dola,
mind.
this whole thing of light and dark, as long as we realize that that is just imagery, because I love a quotation from Galileo, who was reputed to have said, "For I have loved the stars too fondly to be fearful of the night." So, you know, dark, we should remember that that's just imagery. In the Gathas in Yasna 44, it says, one of the verses says, "Who created the luminous bodies and the dark spaces?" So the darkness of space is just natural. It's not, you know, evil. We should be careful to remember the imagery rather than equate it with evil. So that's just my advice.
Yeah. So that's my thinking. So I don't, in my, is there a way that evil is also described? Is there a way that more specifically the
Evil and
idea of evil?
Gathas are all affirmative acts of harming, injuring. I have never seen fear in the Gathas described as evil. We all have fears. In fact, it's natural to have fears. It's one of
Yes.
our survival instincts, you know.
Yes.
Having fear is what enabled us to survive, because it gave us the sense to stay away from what's dangerous, you know. So the only
Yes.
evils in the Gathas are affirmative acts of harming, injuring. I have heard Zoroastrians say that evil is the absence of good. Well, that is not in the Gathas. In the Gathas, evil is active. It's, you choose evil. You choose to, well, we're born with certain evil preferences, but we choose to bring them to life with our choices.
So it seems like it's past the thoughts and words, and then it's in action and in deeds. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure. Let's see now. Whoops.
Dina, I'm so sorry. Does everybody see the email? I mean, your email address that I sent? I sent it twice. I put it on the chat twice. I can see it. Can you see? Okay. Okay.
My problem is I've forgotten how to scroll down on the
That's
screen.
okay. If Dolat can see, Dolat, you can see, right? Okay.
Yes, we can see.
That means everybody can see. Okay. Sorry about the interruption.
Manoj, how do I scroll down on the chat?
Well, just go to your right-hand side.
Okay.
You see a little bar at the corner. You have to just drag it down. You need to drag it down.
You mean, oh, that one. Okay,
Yes.
okay, I see. Right.
Yes,
I see
just
it.
drag it down so you can scroll down.
Okay.
Scroll it, yeah.
The next is Delbar. Thank you, Delbar. I'm glad you enjoyed the talk. You mentioned a soundbite. What soundbite would you use to explain Zoroastrianism? Delbar, there are so many. At the beginning of this talk, I read a few of the answers that some of you had given, which was so neat. And then I gave a few from, the later texts and from the Gathas, and I ended with one of my favorite ones from the Gathas. So actually, I don't think there is one right answer. I think it depends on what speaks to you.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Paranak, thank you, Dina. Mr. Shariari correlates 7 Amesha Spentan with 7 chakras in our body. What is your view on this? Well, I am not too knowledgeable about chakras, and long experience has humbled me to the realization that I don't know everything. There was a time when I thought I knew everything. Now I realize I don't. I know in yoga, the chakras are very important. I just don't know enough about chakras to give an honest, helpful answer. I'm really sorry, Paranak. Please forgive me. Neen. Dear Dina, thanks so much for these series of lectures on Zarathustrian teachings. It has made such a difference in our own personal understanding of our faith. Many thanks for all the hours you have put in to prepare the lectures. After your COVID jab, I hope you will consider a new series of lectures. Yes, shamelessly, I want to pin you down on this because we are learning so much. Neen, that it's so sweet of you. My problem with these lectures is I have so much information that I put it all down and then I think, Dina, you've got to cut this down. So I cut. And then I think, are you doing an adequate job of explaining? So I am not the great big self-confident person. I worry about whether I'm doing an adequate job. I just do the best I can, and I tell our friend Ramazda, Zarathustra calls him a friend, I'm not being presumptuous, to just use me in whatever way he thinks best to spread Zarathustra's words. So, Neen, let me get over these COVID jabs. I don't do well with vaccinations, and then I'll see where we go. So, but thank you. I appreciate your kind words, and it heartens me because I often wonder if I'm getting through in an adequate way. Paranak, to everyone, thank you. A beautiful ending. Well, are there any other questions? I'd be happy to answer them.
Dina, this
Yes.
is Armighty.
I'm sorry?
This is Armighty.
Oh, hi, Armighty.
From Toronto, Canada.
Yeah.
I don't have a question, but I wanted to make a comment on something that Mr. Farshid has written, that you cannot live a passive life and turn a blind eye for all the evils we see in our lives. But I feel that even if you are not doing any good, but if you are allowing evil to exist and fester, you are watching it happen, but you're turning a blind eye to it. I think that is as good as not doing a good. So I think that when you see something bad happening, at least my mom used to say, "Boli na tu gaar bhi khaye." So, right? Because I would always speak up and I would always say this is wrong. So I think that even if you are not doing the right, but at least when you see a wrong, that you shouldn't turn a blind eye to it.
Armati, I 100% agree with you, and I think Farshid would agree with you too. Even in small things, like I remember I was at a lunch counter once and the waitress was giving a person a hard time. And I spoke up for the person because I thought, but I did it politely, you know, it's because I didn't want to escalate the thing. I wanted to defuse it, but still stand up for that person. We can do it in 1,001 ways. Some easy, some not easy. Sometimes it takes a lot of courage to speak up or act in a certain way, especially when you know that it's going to injure you. But it's what we should do. And if you don't do it, don't beat yourself up. We all make mistakes. We all don't do what we should do sometimes. Just say, okay, that was wrong. Don't just drown yourself in guilt. Say, okay, that was wrong. I'm going to try and do better. And the next time something comes around, try to do better. You know, it's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So that's the way we human beings, I think, progress. So Armati, thank you for speaking up. I think that was very beautifully said. Yes.
Thank you.
Keki?
Dina?
Oh, Darius? Sorry.
Yeah, this is not really a question, but it's an issue that I've been thinking about since I was a kid. I studied in a Catholic school where, as you know, the Bible originally was in the Aramaic language, then it went to the Latin language in prayers, and then they moved to English, where everybody could understand. Mm-hmm. And I probably learned some of their prayers before I even learned our own prayers. But when I was growing up, and I was taught to recite our prayers in the Zoroastrian language, nothing what I said I understood because we don't know the language. So I would always argue saying, why can't we have this in English or Gujarati, something like that, so that we understand, we know what we are talking about. Mm-hmm. And the answer was, well, why don't you read the translations, and then you will know what about it. But who's going to do that kind of stuff? It's not like you that you would read the translations and, you're somebody different, but I never did that. My question is, my generation, and especially the current generation, if we expect them to say their prayers in a language which they don't understand, and I notice more even in my case and the others, younger generation, they don't say their prayers because they say, we don't understand anything about it. So the point is, does it make sense to write those prayers in English so that people can understand it? When I mentioned that, they said, well, it's the, it's the, what you call the way the prayers are said, that is the effect. So that loses its effect. So that's why we can't do it. I don't know. But the question is, when we say our prayers, we just don't know what we are saying. So the question is, somebody will say, why should we even say it? So what's the solution? What do you think should be the solution for this generation?
Well, I can't tell you the solution. I can give you my opinion.
Okay.
Which everyone should be free to agree or disagree with. The Pahlavi Zoroastrians, actually probably the Sasanian Zoroastrians before the Arab invasion, did a very interesting thing. By then, no one really understood the vocabulary and grammar of the Avestan language. They understood what people told them certain things meant, but they didn't understand it as a language. Yet they didn't want to leave it. They didn't want to discard it. So what they did was they took some parts of sometimes the Gathas, sometimes other Avestan texts, and they used that. They created a prayer that included the Avestan plus a lot of Pahlavi, which was written in Pazand. Pasand is essentially Pahlavi, which is Middle Persian, in Avestan script with a few ideograms and things like that, which don't materially affect anything. Now, take the Kamnamazda prayer. The first 2 paragraphs are from the Gathas, but then the rest are in Pahlavi, or written in Pasand, but the language is Pahlavi. Now, and please understand, this is just my thinking. Some of the prayers are very, very beautiful. I love the Amairastra prayer. It's a beautiful prayer. Some of the prayers reflected their mindset, reflected what was bothering them. For example, in some of our prayers, we talk about sorcerers and Jaduan, Kikan,
Yeah.
And today, we don't really have any sorcerers. We don't have, that is not a big problem for us. The way I handle it is there are some prayers that I love and I say them. Sometimes, more often, I meditate on them. And then other than that, I do what Zarathustra did. In the Gathas, he talks to the divine all the time about anything and everything in the language of his day. And that's what I do. I'm constantly talking to God in my mind throughout the day in English. So for me, that works. It may not work for someone else. I know it wouldn't have worked for my mom. Every morning after her bath, she would say her prayers, not just the Kasti prayers, the Saroshbaj, and many different prayers that I can't even remember now. For about half an hour, she would say her prayers, and it gave her immense comfort. And I used to think, that's crazy. How can you pray to God when you don't even know what you're saying?
Exactly.
But then I got to thinking, today, I don't know if you've ever been involved in looking into meditation, but they give you I won't say it's a nonsense phrase, but they give you a phrase that you don't understand. It has no meaning to you. The idea being you keep repeating this phrase to keep your mind busy, and then your spirit can concentrate on the meditation. Well, it never worked for me, but I got to thinking, maybe that is what my mother was doing. She was saying stuff she didn't really understand, but her mind was communicating wordlessly with the divine. What's wrong with that?
Right.
I think that's a beautiful way to communicate with the divine.
Right. That's exactly,
mind to mind, heart to heart. It's beautiful. So that's probably what gave her deep contentment and her satisfaction. So my thinking is, I have to admit, I do not believe in vibrations. I do believe, like if you walk into a room, sometimes you can sense vibes of anger or welcome. So yeah, there are such things as vibes. But as far as a language is concerned, for those people who say Avestan or Pahlavi has vibes that the divine pleases the divine more than English, that I can't see.
Right.
Because after all,
I mean, they're all man-made languages anyway.
All languages essentially were man-made.
Right.
And I think if you want to communicate with the divine is ready to listen. Whether you do it in Avestan or Pasand or English, it doesn't matter. The key is to communicate with the divine, mind to mind, heart to heart. Just the communication is what is so important. Yes. And whatever assists that is fine.
Yes, it's interesting what you said, because that's exactly what I do. I talk to God in Gujarati or English. And that's my conversation, that's my prayers in a sense, you know, that if I want to tell him something, that's I just say it in my mind. I don't have to say it loudly, you know.
Exactly.
And then the other thing I feel is like, it's not what you say really, but what you really do in life. That's really the religion, essence of religion, is how you behave yourself, how you act yourself, how you deal with people, what you do, rather than just sitting and praying is not the thing that does it, you know, but what you really do is the matters.
Well, Zarathustra in the Gathas, in many verses, I think I covered this in one of the previous sessions, where he teaches us to worship the divine with its own values. So that's what you are saying. But I've reached an age, 81, where I think anything that works for a person is good. I know I have had huge, huge benefit just from talking to the divine in my mind. He doesn't talk back in words. He doesn't talk back in a way I can hear, but I often feel that he is responding.
Can I, I'm sorry, can I interject something here? I don't mean to,
Sure,
it's the beauty of Zoom here. And I know Behram had his hand up, so I want to acknowledge that. But I don't want to lose this thought process because, you know, my understanding is, and I learned Gathas and all that through English. I couldn't even do the Farsi piece because I had so much trauma attached with the language and the way I was taught about it that I could not understand it till I could actually enter the teachings through English. So, but what I'm coming across and I'm learning, the whole idea of a house of songs, that when house of songs, that the Gathas, it's the, you know, when you can actually recite it correctly, quote unquote, if you go with the actual, the tones of it, it actually is like music. So it has a universal language. And I've had people that,
absolutely right.
Yeah. So that piece for me, I regret in some ways, and I'm working on learning to recite it in a way that the music of it can actually touch my nervous system, my mind and my body, and to teach it to the next generation. But absolutely, because the meanings of it are even more beautiful, but the tones are just an unconscious way to understand it. And it really touches the heart when it's sang in the correct tones.
You are right, because the Gathas are poetry and they were sung. Now, people say that the rest of the Avestan is, quote, prose, but I don't think it's right to inflict our view of what is poetry on another culture or language. Because if you look at the Yasna Haptang Haiti, in part 6 of my website, I have translated a few Yasna Haptang Haiti verses. The music of the words is so beautiful that I felt impelled to translate them more literally, even though probably in English I should have done it another way. But it is so beautiful. The music of the words is so beautiful. There's rhythm, alliteration. Look at the Hashem Bahu, look at the Yatahu Veru. I mean, any kid who has learned the Hashem Bahu understands the rhythm and the alliteration. It's beautiful, right? So don't let other people inflict their narrow definitions on you. Just go with what's in your heart and mind and have confidence in yourself. Now, I only see 3 people. Did you say someone else's hand was up?
Yes, Behram's hand is up.
Oh, Behram?
Yes. Can I speak?
Please do.
So to the point which was raised by Darius about how the children now should recite their prayers, and also to the point that Daulat just raised, that there is music in the Gathas. I would say that there is a process going on right now that we can tap into. In Houston, there are children who are 11 years old, 7 years old, who are reciting the prayers in Pazan, in Pahlavi, and in Avestan. It's like an orchestra of little children who are reciting these every Saturday and Sunday for 1 hour.
Wow.
And the beauty of it is that the prayers are recited in the ancient languages, all 3 languages, and the English translation is then recited by the children. So for me, it has been a great learning experience. I learned these prayers by heart as a child without understanding them.
Mhm.
Now I'm understanding them. And I can see the influence of the gathas on the later prayers, just like Dina was just telling us. So I would recommend that, and it's free. I mean, anyone can log in. It starts at 5:30 in Central Time in Houston, and it goes exactly for 1 hour. It's a great way to empower our next generation in identifying the identity and learning about our scriptures, including they did the whole Aunavaiti Gatha recently.
Wow. Behram, would you be able to put that into the chat room?
I cannot. I'm as computer challenged as you are, Dina. So I can. I can. If somebody writes to me, I can forward them.
Well, I'm
an
glad
email,
there's
but
someone
I'm
else like
not,
me.
No, I'm way worse than you are. So I'm sorry about that, but I'm just technically challenged.
Daulat, Dad, remember Daulat, I had told you, and then you said you will try and log on, because I attend those Houston prayers too.
Oh, it's the same one. Okay.
Yes,
Who is speaking?
this is Almighty.
Hello, Almighty. Okay, great.
So,
Almighty, do you think you could send me an email showing me how to log on?
I will,
I'd be so grateful. Thank you.
because I keep sending them to people here in Canada, because mostly the children are from Houston area. When I started listening to it during the COVID times. And I think, Behram, it started because I wasn't there when it started. It started with trying to teach some young children about the Kasti prayers. So it always starts with the Kasti prayers. They always do that first. And then each time, all of January, we finish the Aunavaiti Gatha.
Wow, that
And
is
every time they
fantastic.
pray a little bit, and below is the translation, also spoken by the children. And
Almighty, if there is some place where it's recorded, where
I don't think they recorded.
Is this the same as Nerang Hambandaji that you send me? Okay.
Yes. It's,
Then I'm going to put it in the chat. I have it.
yes.
I have it in the chat.
Almighty, is there some place where the Aunavaiti Gatha is, where these sessions with the Aunavaiti are recorded?
No, I don't think they recorded, but she has put it in the chat.
Yeah, that's for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is very beautiful. And for me, it's just like you were saying, Dina, about your mother, finding some space and solace in the way she was praying. It works like that. I come out of that 1 hour feeling very happy in my heart.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful.
And I listen to it more because my dad used to pray like that.
Yeah.
He used to sing the prayers.
Right.
So when I started teaching my children, they used to, I didn't used to say, okay, let's pray. I would say, let's sing Yataveya Nashemvo. And that's how I started it. And they would actually sing. Of course, the rest of it, they didn't learn it that way. But until today, the Yataveya Nashemvo, they sing. Because we used to sing it like a song. Because that's how my dad used to pray. And then it reminds me of my dad when I listen to the Houston prayers. They're really nice.
You know, I think the prayers you learn when you're little, like my mother taught me the Ashembo, Yatao Verio, all the Kasti prayers, etc. Before I went to boarding school, well, no, not before, but when I was very young, probably when I was 5 or 6, 7 years old, children love to, once you memorize them, they don't care if they don't know what it means. They love the sound of it, the music, the rhythm, the alliteration, you know. So I think one of the keys is to teach children while they're young, and then get to the meanings when they're a little older.
Right.
So I'm going to copy all of this.
Actually, every time after this talk, 6:30, we have to go there. So sometimes I have in your talk said, okay, I have to go because I have to log on to something else. That's what I log on to.
You mean
So
the Houston talk? Houston,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, it will be in 15 minutes, actually
Yeah.
12 minutes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, it's in 15 minutes. So,
Good
and it's
job.
on the dot at 6:30, and the children pray, and then the girls, mostly the girls, read the translations. There are two little boys who don't even have their Navjot and done yet. It was supposed to be last year, and then COVID happened. But if you see them praying, you would be surprised because they can pray so much more than what our normal children learn for their Navjot. Because they have been in this for a year now. I think they started in April. I just started in May when I arrived in Canada. And then every time I would say, where is the Tandarosti happening? Where is this happening? So that's when I was introduced to it. And it's really nice. You guys should come and listen sometimes. We did the mayor, yes, I think it was Mayor Maino and Mayor Roj, and they did so, and then he does the Ardivesh, yes. And
Yeah,
then,
but the Mer Yesht, if you have an accurate translation, it has some pretty grim stuff in it.
yeah. And then we do a lot of nirangs. That is how it started. Because like even when there's somebody ill, then we pray for their health.
Yeah.
And so he will, and then one day Farokh Mistry said, isn't there a nirang that we can say, let all these, because at that time there was all this controversy going on about COVID in the US. So he said, can we not pray so their minds get changed by our prayers or something like that? And the Podastiji said, okay, I will research and we'll do something. But now it only happens on Saturday, Sundays, as Biram said, because the
Thank
children
you.
started going to school. Otherwise, it was every single day at 6:30
Yeah.
until August of last year.
Well, thank you, Armati. I think what you've told us is very valuable. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Anyway,
Thank you.
so
Thank you for that piece of information.
yeah. But Dina, I wish you continue after your jab.
Yeah, we all wish for that, Dina.
Oh my goodness. Well, let me one step at a time, because those jabs really make me sick. So I have to get over that first.
I'm not even sure if I want to take it because I have many allergies. I can't take
I do
antibiotics.
too.
I can't
I do
take Tylenol.
Yeah.
I have sulfur, I have toxoplasmosis, I have negative blood. So I'm wondering if I should even take it. But I think if I don't take it, I will not be able to travel. And
Why don't you consult with your doctor? Because
I know, but here in Canada, they are not seeing you. So you have to call and then they'll call you back. And there's all that steps. But
yeah.
anyway, my turn is coming soon. My age group is going to start. So I've already written to my doctor last week.
Good.
It goes to her secretary and they'll call me back and say it's okay. My worry is not that there will be something in there. My worry is if I get like an adverse effect, I cannot take those medications. And it is something in our blood because my son has the same problem. My sister's granddaughter has the same problem. It's the Stevens-Johnson syndrome where we cannot take antibiotics.
Right.
So anyway.
Well, take care, Armati. I hope things work out well for you.
And let us know how the jab treated you.
Well, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
So
we will wish for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dina, before you leave, can you give me the title of this lecture today? So
this
we can
one's
put it
lecture is The Celebrated Seven.
Celebrated Seven.
The Celebrated Seven. And I'll send you a PDF copy as always, Manaz.
Okay. Okay.
So you and the board.
Thank you so much.
Well,
Thank you so much.
I would like to, before we conclude, I would like to thank the Board of Directors of California's Zoroastrian Center for hosting this, for suggesting and hosting this seminar. I really
We should thank you, Dina. Without you, nothing can be, none of this could have been possible. So thank you so much
I would never,
for giving us this opportunity.
It would never have occurred to me to do a Zoom seminar until you suggested it. So if people have benefited, then I'm happy. So I think that
we had so many feedback that this is really good. This is recorded.
Really?
So we can all, we can all listen to it. So we have so much good feedback.
Good.
So thank you so much for
it.
doing so.
I'm glad to hear it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, everyone, I'm going to miss you all, but stay well, stay happy, and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dina. God bless you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.